Welcome, brave souls. Tonight we uncover the terrifying secret of the neighbor's chest, a darkness that whispers, hums, and hungers. Stay close, for this tale will chill your bones and make you question what lurks in the shadows. Dare you confront the horror within?
When Mr. Grant moved in next door, I noticed him immediately. A tall, stoic man with piercing eyes that seemed to watch everything. There was something about him that unsettled me, though I couldn't quite place it. He rarely spoke and never smiled. From my window, I saw him unpacking. No family, no friends, just boxes labeled in odd symbols. Among them, a large locked chest that required 2 men to carry. It felt like the air grew colder the moment it crossed his threshold. At night, strange noises came from his house. Low hums, whispers, and sometimes distant cries. My wife dismissed it, but I couldn't shake the feeling something was terribly wrong. What kind of man lived in near silence by day and stirred the darkness at night? I tried to introduce myself one afternoon. He opened the door slightly, his face half hidden in shadow. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said nervously. He nodded, his voice like gravel. "Thanks, busy." And with that, he shut the door. Curiosity grew as days passed. I saw no deliveries, yet every night the noises continued. One evening, a heavy thud echoed through the thin walls. I rushed outside, but his windows were dark, and his yard was eerily silent. I began to notice other oddities. He never took out the trash, and his lights flickered at exactly midnight. His presence seemed to cast a shadow over our once lively street. Still, no one else seemed to notice or care. One day I saw him carrying a shovel into his backyard. He glanced around nervously before disappearing behind the fence. I knew I shouldn't pry, but something inside me urged me to uncover whatever secret he was hiding. That night I crept into my own backyard. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow. Peering through a gap in the fence, I saw Mr. Grant digging. The hole was deep, but there was no sign of what he intended to bury or unearth. My heart raced as I saw him lift the heavy chest from his house and drag it toward the hole. He muttered to himself, his words inaudible but filled with urgency. What could be so important that it needed to be hidden at such a depth? Suddenly he stopped. His head snapped in my direction, and for a moment our eyes met. I ducked, pressing my back against the fence. Had he seen me? I held my breath, praying the darkness concealed me. Minutes felt like hours before I dared to look again. He was gone. The chest was still beside the hole, but Mr. Grant had vanished. My pulse quickened. This was my chance. I could find out what he was hiding. I climbed over the fence, landing softly on the damp earth. Every step toward the chest felt heavier, as if an unseen force tried to push me back. The night was silent, but the air buzzed with tension. The chest was locked, but I noticed something odd. A faint glow emanated from the cracks. I reached out to touch it, but before my fingers met the cold metal, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I spun around to find Mr. Grant staring at me, his eyes colder than ever. "You shouldn't be here," he growled. His grip tightened, and for the first time, I felt genuine fear. "Leave now and forget what you saw," he warned. Despite his warning, I couldn't stop thinking about the chest. What could possibly glow like that? The next day, I decided to investigate further. My wife thought I was being paranoid, but I knew something sinister was at play. That evening, I waited for Mr. Grant to leave. He always went out at 8 p.m., returning just before midnight. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar, determined to open the chest and unveil his secret. Climbing the fence again, I moved quickly. The chest was still there, its glow dimmer in the daylight but unmistakable. With trembling hands, I pried at the lock, sweat dripping down my face despite the cool night air. The lock snapped open and the chest creaked as I lifted the lid. Inside, I found nothing, just a void, an endless, swirling darkness that seemed to pull at my very soul. The glow wasn't light, it was the absence of it. A sudden gust of wind slammed the chest shut, nearly catching my fingers. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What had I just seen? It felt alive, sentient, and it was hungry. Before I could process, I heard footsteps approaching. I barely had time to climb back over the fence before Mr. Grant returned. From my hiding spot, I watched as he stood over the chest, his expression grim. He whispered something, and the chest began to hum. It was feeding, consuming something unseen. I realized then that I wasn't dealing with a man hiding a secret. I was dealing with a guardian, protecting us from whatever lurked inside that chest. The next morning, I confronted Mr. Grant. "What's in the chest?" I demanded. He didn't seem surprised. "You don't want to know," he said flatly. "It's better that way." But I couldn't let it go. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked, his tone heavy. I nodded, and he sighed. "That chest holds a fragment of something ancient, something that should never be freed. I'm here to keep it contained." He explained how the chest had been passed down for generations, each guardian tasked with keeping it hidden and fed. "If it ever opens fully, it will devour everything," he warned. My stomach churned at the thought. I asked why he hadn't destroyed it. His response chilled me. "You can't destroy what doesn't belong to this world. The best we can do is keep it locked away." His eyes burned with a mix of fear and determination. Mr. Grant gave me a choice: forget what I saw and live in ignorance, or help him guard the chest. The weight of his offer crushed me. I didn't want this responsibility, but I couldn't turn away either. That night I sat by my window, watching his house. The chest was more than an object. It was a curse, one that tied Mr. Grant to a life of isolation and dread. And now I was part of it too. I decided to help. Together, we would ensure the chest remained sealed. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before the darkness inside found a way out. Weeks passed, and I became Mr. Grant's silent partner. Every night we checked the chest, ensuring its locks were secure. But the glow grew stronger, and the hum louder. The darkness was waking. One stormy night, the chest began to shake violently. We rushed to secure it, but the lock snapped like twigs. The lid flew open and the void inside roared, filling the room with a deafening, unnatural sound. We fought to close it, but it was too strong. Shadows poured out, twisting and writhing like living nightmares. "We need to seal it with the ancient ritual," Mr. Grant shouted over the chaos. He handed me a strange inscribed dagger. "This will bind the darkness temporarily," he said. With no time to hesitate, I followed his lead, chanting the incantation as we worked to push the shadows back. The room grew colder, and the shadows screamed as the dagger pierced the chest's edge. Slowly, the void began to shrink, pulling the shadows back inside. With one final push, we slammed the lid shut. Sweat-soaked and trembling, we reinforced the locks. The glow faded and the hum ceased. But we knew this was only a temporary victory. The chest would never stop trying to break free. Now I live every day knowing that my neighbor's secret is also mine. Together, we guard the chest, praying the world never learns what lies within. For if it does, there will be no one left to stop it.
The story may have ended, but nightmares have a way of clinging to you, following you into the dark. Tonight, when the shadows lengthen and you feel that creeping dread, remember, some nightmares don't end when you wake up. If this story left you uneasy and you crave more terror, hit the like and subscribe button. The real nightmare is only just beginning.